Prayer Hall, Sutra. Volume 1, Book 9, number 472. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Once I came riding a she-ass when I had just attained the age of puberty. Allah's apostle was offering the prayer at Mina with no wall in front of him, and I passed in front of some of the row. There I dismounted and let my she-ass loose to graze and entered the row, and nobody objected to me about it. Volume 1, Book 9, number 473. Narrated by Ibn Umar. Whenever Allah's apostle came out on Eid day, he used to order that a harbor, a short spear, to be planted in front of him, as a sutra for his prayer, and then he used to pray facing it with the people behind him, and used to do the same while on a journey. After the Prophet, this practice was adopted by the Muslim rulers, who followed his traditions. Volume 1, Book 9, number 474. Narrated by bin Abi Juhayfa. I heard my father saying, the Prophet led us, and prayed a 2 rakat Zuhr prayer and then a 2 rakat Asr prayer at Al-Batha, with an anza planted in front of him, as a sutra, while women and donkeys were passing in front of him, beyond that anza. Volume 1, Book 9, number 475. Narrated by Sa'al bin Sa'd. The distance between the masala of Allah's apostle and the wall was just sufficient for a sheep to pass through. Volume 1, Book 9, number 476. Narrated by Salama. The distance between the wall of the mosque and the pulpit was hardly enough for a sheep to pass through. Volume 1, Book 9, number 477. Narrated by Abdullah. The Prophet used to get a harbor planted in front of him, as a sutra, and pray behind it. Volume 1, Book 9, number 478. Narrated by bin Abi Juhayfa. That he had heard his father saying, Allah's apostle came to us at midday and water was brought for his ablution. He performed ablution and led us in Zuhr and Asr prayers with an anza planted in front of him, as a sutra, while women and donkeys were passing beyond it. Volume 1, Book 9, number 479. Narrated by Anas ibn Malik. Whenever the Prophet went for answering the call of nature, I and another boy used to go after him with a staff, a stick or an anza and a tumbler of water, and when he finished from answering the call of nature we would hand that tumbler of water to him. Volume 1, Book 9, number 480. Narrated by Abu Juhayfa. Allah's apostle came out at midday and offered a 2 rakat Zuhr and Asr prayers at Al-Batha, and an anza was planted in front of him, as a sutra. He performed ablution and the people took the remaining water left after his ablution and rubbed their bodies with it. Volume 1, Book 9, number 481. Narrated by Yazid bin al-Ubaid. I used to accompany Salama bin al-Aqwa, and he used to pray behind the pillar which was near the place where the Qurans were kept. I said, O Abu Muslim, I see you always seeking to pray behind this pillar. He replied, I saw Allah's apostle always seeking to pray near that pillar. Volume 1, Book 9, number 482. Narrated by Anas. I saw the most famous people amongst the companions of the Prophet hurrying towards the pillars at the Maghrib prayer before the Prophet came for the prayer. Volume 1, Book 9, number 483. Narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet entered the Kaaba along with Osama bin Zaid, Uthman bin Talha and Bilal, and remained there for a long time. When they came out, I was the first man to enter the Kaaba. I asked Bilal, where did the Prophet pray? Bilal replied, between the 2 front pillars. Volume 1, Book 9, number 484. Narrated by Nafi. Abdullah bin Umar said, Allah's apostle entered the Kaaba along with Osama bin Zaid, Bilal and Uthman bin Talha al-Hijabi and closed the door and stayed there for some time. I asked Bilal when he came out, "What did the Prophet do?" He replied, "He offered prayer with one pillar to his left and one to his right and 3 behind." In those days, the Kaaba was supported by 6 pillars. Malik said, "There were 2 pillars on his, the Prophet's, right side." Volume 1, Book 9, number 485. Narrated by Nafi. The Prophet used to make his she-camels sit across and he would pray facing it, as a sutra. I asked, what would the Prophet do if the she-camel was provoked and moved? He said, he would take its camel saddle and put it in front of him and pray facing its back part, as a sutra. And Ibn Umar used to do the same. This indicates that one should not pray except behind a sutra. Volume 1, Book 9, number 486. Narrated by Aisha. Do you make us, women, equal to dogs and donkeys? While I used to lie in my bed, the Prophet would come and pray facing the middle of the bed. I used to consider it not good to stand in front of him in his prayers. So I used to slip away slowly and quietly from the foot of the bed till I got out of my guilt. Volume 1, Book 9, number 487. Narrated by Abu Sa'id. The Prophet said, what is ascribed to him in the following Hadith 488. Volume 1, Book 9, number 488. Narrated by Abu Saleh as-Saman. I saw Abu Sa'id al-Khudri praying on a Friday, behind something which acted as a sutra. A young man from Bani Abi Mu'ayt wanted to pass in front of him, but Abu Sa'id repulsed him with a push on his chest. Finding no alternative, he again tried to pass, but Abu Sa'id pushed him with a greater force. The young man abused Abu Sa'id and went to Marwan and lodged a complaint against Abu Sa'id, and Abu Sa'id followed the young man to Marwan, who asked him, "O Abu Sa'id, what has happened between you and the son of your brother?" Abu Sa'id said to him, I heard the Prophet saying, if anybody amongst you is praying behind something as a sutra and somebody tries to pass in front of him, then he should repulse him, and if he refuses, he should use force against him, for he is a Satan. Volume 1, Book 9, number 489. Narrated by Basar bin Sa'id, that Zaid bin Khalid sent him to Abi Juhaym to ask him what he had heard from Allah's apostle about a person passing in front of another person who was praying. Abu Juhaym replied, Allah's apostle said, if the person who passes in front of another person in prayer knew the magnitude of his sin, he would prefer to wait for 40 days, months or years, rather than to pass in front of him. Abu an-Nadr said, I do not remember exactly whether he said 40 days, months or years.